My name is Mobolaji Adeniyi, an architect and presently the first Vice President or President-elect of the Nigerian Institute of Architects. Studying architecture was a dream come true for me because as a child, I recall I started to draw even before I could write. So drawing and art for me was a passion, and this was noticed by my father then. He was a gynecologist, a medical doctor, practitioner, and he saw this skill and talent in me. And luckily he had a friend then who was an architect, late architect Bilewu from Kaduna chapter. And so he got me interested in architecture, told me there was a way I could, use my drawing skills rather than just do portraits of people, make comics like I was doing then, that I could actually draw buildings. And so he got me interested, took me to some of his building sites where he was having some building developments then. And so this is gradually how I developed an interest in architecture. Of course, I was both an art and a science student. And if you know, architecture is actually the art and science of building design. So that's how I became interested in studying architecture. I went to Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria. And those days, not very many women studied architecture. But interestingly, the particular year that I got admission into ABU to study architecture, we had quite a number of ladies for the very first time. Before that, we had 2 in a class, 3 in a class, but in my class, we had about 10 girls. Of course, this is still compared to about, I think, 70 or so boys that studied architecture. So we were still very much in the minority. But for standards then, we were quite a number of female architects. And so this is how I started my journey to become an architect. When I graduated, I came to Ibadan for Youth Corps. The firm I worked with then was with Allied Architects, Architect Dio Fadele, late Architect Fadele, one of our old veteran architects. And he was very interested in the Nigerian Institute of Architects, and they made sure that all of us who worked with them then went for meetings, got to know all the big architects, and this is when I started getting interested in NIA. I saw the group of distinguished men and few women then who were manning the Institute of Architects. I saw the zeal for the profession, I saw their service, and I got very interested. I wanted to add my quota. Of course, I've always wanted to serve in one capacity or the other, and I saw that being a member of the Nigerian Institute of Architects was the opportunity I needed to be able to work with others as a team to project my profession and ensure that architects are placed in their rightful place in the building industry and in the society at large. And so that's how I started serving in the Oyo State chapter. At a point, I was assistant secretary, rose up to become the vice chair, eventually became the chair of the Oyo State chapter. As a matter of fact, then I was the first female to become the chapter chair in Oyo. At that time, we're talking now about 2001, maybe one other female architect had been a chapter chair in the NIA. I think architect Samande of Niger chapter, I believe. She was the only one then that had been a chapter chair as a woman. And of course, as a woman, there's always that, desire to put an extra touch. And we had mentors like architect Buke Jumi, the first and only female president of the NIA, to look up to. I was chapter chair when she was president, and I could see the zeal, I could see all that she put in to really project architecture during her tenure. And this challenged me to also want to aspire to become like her. So after my stint as chapter chair in 2000, I believe I did 2 terms. After that, I became the national treasurer of the institute. And as national treasurer, of course, my focus was, what could I do better? One of the things I focused on was to ensure that for the first time, when I was giving my accounts, we didn't have a deficit. I made sure we had enough money because of the prudent use of our resources. And then it was the first time under the presidency of Architect Tunji Bolu that we had an audited account for the NIA accounts. And so that was a legacy I left in my stewardship as the treasurer. From there, I became, a few years after that, I became the 3rd vice president. And so I got together architects, Nigerian architects in the US, in the UK, and started the drive for the diaspora chapters. And to the glory of God, I succeeded. And the UK section of the NIA has been inaugurated. This is something that I was really, really very pleased with, and they're doing very well. I believe by the grace of God, in the next couple of years, we should be able to inaugurate the North America and Canada section, as well as others that will be coming up. And then I became the 2nd vice president. And as usual, I wanted to make impact and leave a legacy. I was in charge of the benevolent fund, and I met a benevolent fund that existed only in paper. Thankfully, it was architect Ejumi as president that started the idea of the benevolent fund. But after that, nothing was done to it. So I took up the challenge and revived the benevolent fund. We started a fund. I was able to make a drive for funds to come into the fund, and we're able to raise a lot of money, as well as make council get an approval to get a percentage of dues of members to be part of the benevolent fund. So we started off. We opened an account, we got funds into it, but most importantly, we were able to help members. It was during the COVID period. We extended support to our aged members and those who were in need. We helped a lot of people that were sick, those who were bankrupt. We were able to affect members all over the country. And this was a very good start and revival for the benevolent fund. And thereafter, by the grace of God, I became the 1st vice president and now the president of the Nigerian Institute of Architects. So the next step is going to be the president of the NIA, and I believe working with the team that is existing and the new members that will be added onto that team, we're going to make sure that NIA achieves the purpose of its founding fathers. I want to ensure that NIA gets back to its position of leadership in the built environment, as well as be that relevant voice in the society.